All right, I'd like to pick up the discussion that we began last time of John Locke, and with particular reference to Locke's theory of ideas. Let's try and pick up the threads by reminding ourselves that Locke, like Descartes, has a representational theory of knowledge. That is to say that knowledge is basically of our own ideas. Ideas are the immediate objects of our awareness. And so knowledge is at best representational. The mind observes its own ideas and infers from these what there is in the external world. So when we discuss Locke's theory of ideas, we're talking about those mental representations. Tremendously important, keep that in mind, because by setting the stage that way, he's opening himself up to problems about whether or not we can show that there are external material bodies outside the mind, whether or not there are other minds other than one's own, whether or not there is an objectively real God rather than just the idea of God, whether or not there are objectively binding moral obligations rather than just our ideas of certain moral obligations. In other words, he's opening himself up to the question as to whether we can know anything more than appearances, phenomena, as distinct from reality in itself. And in a very important way, that question is still with us in contemporary debates over realism and anti-realism. And so Locke, in a way, is setting the stage for a great deal that comes later. So ideas, then, are mental representations. He distinguishes between simple ideas, complex ideas, and abstract ideas. So we need to say something about each of these. Simple ideas are simple in the sense that they are the indivisible constituents of thought. Simple in the sense of indivisible. Atomistic. Simple ideas, then, are of two sorts, simple ideas of sensation and of reflection. By sensation, he refers to what others call, I think he does at times, the outer senses. The outer senses, the 5 physical senses. So simple ideas of sensation have to do with colour, sound, smell, taste, and touch, the 5 senses. And you can readily come up with examples of simple ideas then of each of these. Simple idea of colour is a sensation of blueness, a particular sensation of a particular blueness. A simple idea of sound is a sensation of loudness, a particular sensation of particular loudness, and so forth across the range of things. Simple ideas of reflection have to do with what he calls the inner sense, that is to say, introspective. So that as you experience your own experiencing, you reflect on those ideas, yes, but also on the mental states that you have in having those ideas. So you have, for instance, a simple idea of reflection that has to do with thinking, the idea of thinking, the idea of doubting, of wishing, of hoping, of feeling, of expecting, mental acts, mental states, as well as particular kinds of mental feelings that may come along. So these are all simple ideas, then, of particular sensations and reflections. And if we're talking of simple ideas of sensation, particularly, then we have to distinguish between primary and secondary qualities. Because the primary qualities that we ascribe to material bodies are the qualities which those bodies themselves objectively have, whether we perceive them or not. And the qualities which material bodies have in the Newtonian science of the day are simply the properties of spatial occupancy, shape, size, density, primary qualities. Secondary qualities are simply qualities of our ideas that have no objective counterpart. So the rose is not red. It doesn't really smell rosy. It's not soft in itself, but only to the touch. That is to say, secondary qualities are qualities produced in our experience by material bodies. Their external cause is the effect of the material body, via our sense organs. So that our ideas of secondary qualities are ideas of qualities which are purely subjective, exist in the consciousness only. The sky is not blue, the rose isn't red. Now, if you're familiar with Tennyson, Tennyson in the 19th century is trying to put together something of his classical vision, shaped partly by the Greeks, partly by Christianity. He's trying to put that together with this scientific worldview of the Newtonian sort, you see. And it's this world stripped of secondary qualities, a world without colour and sound, smell, which he says, can I take a thing so dead, embrace it for my mortal good? You see. You can see how the Romanticist was going to abhor this kind of a universe. Wordsworth's heart dances with the daffodils. You see, never John Locke's. Couldn't. So we have then these distinctions in his discussion of simple ideas, and that's simply reviewing what we did as we left off last time. Comment there, question, are you finding that fairly straightforward? Try to assimilate that. Because it's important to see in Locke, Berkeley, Hume, Kant, in other words, for the next 6 weeks, at least. It's important to realise that what you know is not sticks and stones and trees, but simply ideas, representations. And if we do have knowledge of sticks and stones and trees, it's indirectly through a cause-effect argument that we infer that they're objectively there. But the immediate awareness is simply as of our own mental states, our own ideas, mental representations. Our ideas, then, of primary qualities are indeed representations, copies, of the way things are. And so this is sometimes called a copy theory of knowledge. We have mental copies. So in that sense, truth is seen as correspondence between the idea and the thing. But our ideas of secondary qualities are not copies. So it's a copy theory as far as primary qualities are concerned, not secondary qualities. Okay, simple ideas. Any comment there? Complex ideas are simply the result of our combining various simple ideas. And he makes the point that this compounding seems to be a voluntary kind of activity. So that we've somehow or other chosen to put these simple ideas together into larger composites. So my idea of the human body is a composite that I constructed. It's a mental construct. Compound ideas, complex ideas, yes, let's put it down. They are mental constructs. And inasmuch as my mental construct is of a person with certain colour to the face, with perhaps a softness to the skin, perhaps a little fragrance, particularly if you come straight from a phys ed class. All right, then, insofar as it incorporates those things, those compound ideas, complex ideas, are not exact representations. Because the secondary qualities are subjective. They don't have objective correlates. So there's no guarantee, built-in guarantee, that our complex ideas of bodies and houses and ships and trees have objective reference just as they are. Complex ideas are mental constructs. He gives a number of examples, and they become crucially important in the development of this tradition. Take, for instance, the example of power, causal power, which he discusses on 184, 185. He suggests this is a complex idea, most clearly derived from simple ideas of reflection on the relationships between our mental states, on the relationship between my willing and then affirming something, or on the relationship between my deciding to do something and then physically doing it. Because I see that there is some sort of correlation going on between willing and doing, I assume there's some sort of causal connection between the mind that wills and the body that does. So the idea of causal power arises as a complex idea that we suppose represents what goes on between mind and body. Now, you notice in the way I describe that, a distinction between there being correlations between two events and there being connection between two events. Correlation, if you like, conjunction. They are there, conjunction. But is there any connection? You see. Now, says Locke, the idea of a connection just arises, and we voluntarily affirm it, the idea of causal power. Now, it's precisely that which David Hume is going to criticise. It's crucial. Because in this representational view, how do you know there is an external world? Whether it be the world of material things, a world of other minds, or a world in which God is included, how do you know those things exist? Unless it is by a cause-effect argument. Here's the effect, the ideas, here is the cause, those external things. Now, you can only use a cause-effect argument if you know there's a cause-effect connection. You see? Whereas, in fact, all you know in your ideas is the correlation, the conjunction. You don't know the connection. So a couple of weeks from now, when you're reading David Hume, you'll hear him saying that all there is to this idea of power is the idea of constant conjunction. We have no empirical basis at all for affirming any causal connection. And he becomes a skeptic about knowing anything about causal power. Now, what's that going to do to Newtonian science? Where everything is understood in terms of forces, causal power. What's it going to do to the possibility of knowing anything about the material world? Knowing anything about other minds or God, if you can't have causal arguments? You see? So what he's doing then with complex ideas like the idea of power is crucial. The idea of substance, likewise. As you read Locke, notice carefully the way he talks about substance on pages 186 and again 189, whether it be material substance or whether it be mental substance, immaterial mind, spirit, soul. You see, what we have in our simple ideas is simply ideas of certain qualities, primary qualities, secondary qualities. Where does the idea of substance come from? Well, it's an idea of something which has those qualities. You see? You get the idea of material substance by putting primary quality ideas together. It is something, I know not what, that has those qualities. And the way Locke talks about material substance, then, is simply to call it something I know not what. Simple. And he talks of spiritual substance, mind or soul, the same way. It's something that has mental properties. Something I know not what. Now, obviously, somebody like Hume is going to make hay out of that. Yeah. Or try again the concept of infinity. We don't have the actual paragraphs that deal with that in our selection, but in the full text he discusses the idea of infinity, a complex idea. How do we get the idea of infinity from simple ideas? Well, if we're talking of space being infinite, as Newton did, what we're talking of is a point beyond this point, beyond this point, beyond this point, and so on, as we say, ad infinitum. The idea of infinity is a complex idea developed by that process of extrapolation, an endless extrapolation. And similarly with the idea of infinite time, extrapolation. And so that's the way the Newtonian conceptions of space and time are accounted for, absolute infinite space and time. Complex ideas derive from simple ideas of particular points in space, particular periods of time. And he says that that's the way in which we get the idea of God as a spirit who is infinite. I mentioned that Locke's father was one of the signatories of the Westminster Confession of Faith. That Westminster Confession defines God as a spirit, infinite in wisdom, goodness, love, and power. It defines the human person as a spirit, finite in wisdom, goodness, love, and power. God as a spirit, infinite in the same regards. Well, how do you get the idea of an infinite God? How do you get the idea of God? By extrapolation from our ideas of the wisdom, goodness, love, and power which human minds exert. Extrapolating that to infinite wisdom, infinite goodness, infinite love, infinite power, and you have the idea of an infinite being. That's how the idea of God develops. Complex idea. So he tries to account in that way for the whole kind of mental apparatus, conceptual apparatus, which we have, in keeping with his basic conviction that we have no innate idea of God or of anything else, that all of our ideas ultimately derive from experience, that is to say, from simple ideas of sensation and reflection. Complex ideas. Comment? Yeah, Esther.
Yes, complex ideas have no guarantee of being absolutely correct.
Right.
Because they've already experienced secondary.
Some of them at least have, yeah.
And they're called these ideas. Simple ideas.
Mhm.
How do you know that you're actually seeing a correct representation of your fucking reality? How do you know?
How do you know that what you think is correct?
Yeah, and how do
Yeah.
you specify that your simple ideas are
Yeah, could you hold on to that till we get down there? Because he makes a distinction that, is as old as Plato between knowledge and opinion, knowledge and belief. And in effect, he's going to say that there are different degrees of knowledge. And the third degree that he calls opinion, belief, is what applies to knowledge of material things. In other words, you don't have certainty.
But I mean, even as far as spatial things like that is a square or a cubic object.
Yeah.
That's been learned. You don't see that and know that.
That's right, and he's willing to admit it. That's a matter of opinion. Yeah. There are things that we can know, but only some things. Well, look here, since you've raised that, let's jump ahead and pick that up while it's hot. What he does in talking about knowledge and belief is to distinguish three kinds of knowledge of the first kind, second kind, third kind. And you can track this down for yourself, pages 198 to 201, thereabouts. Knowledge of the first kind is by intuition. Knowledge of the second kind is by demonstration. Demonstration. Knowledge of the third kind is by sensation, sensory means. These three kinds. Now, intuition is what we know immediately, by immediate awareness. We only have knowledge where there is immediate knowledge rather than representational knowledge. Okay? You only have intuitive knowledge when it's known immediately rather than by representation. Well, what do we know then that's intuitive? You see? Well, what you know that is intuitive is that A equals A. In other words, laws of logic. And applications of the laws of logic that you get, for instance, in mathematics, where the three angles of a triangle add up to two right angles. You say, is that intuitive? Well, in the final analysis it is, after it's worked out, it comes through intuitively. So the intuitive is what is immediately self-evident. If you like, the fact that I now have a sensation of blueness, that would be intuitive. But that there is a blue object out there in the real world, that's not intuitive. Demonstration, knowledge by demonstration of the second kind, is what we know as a result of logical demonstration, logical proof, with certainty. In other words, if you have certain intuitive premises, self-evident premises, those principles, you can deduce certain things, prove it. And as I indicated in the mathematical example, each step in the proof must come through with intuitive certainty. But again, that's not dealing with what is representational, unless the proof is such as to get beyond the representation to reality itself. But how in a deductive proof you get external reality and a conclusion if it's not in one of the premises? You see, in no syllogism can you have in a conclusion something which is not involved in one of the premises. Problem. So if we're talking about knowledge of the external world, we are consigned to knowledge of the third kind.